influencing popular culture, politics, and everything in between. The local station takes you ringside as we discuss the crazy world that is professional wrestling. This is Going Ringside with the local station.
Hey there, I'm Scott Johnson. Welcome to another episode of Going Ringside. So glad you could be with us today. We're excited to be joined today by Brutus the Barber Beefcake. Beefcake's going to join us in a little bit here on the show. I'm excited to talk to him about his life and times in the wrestling business. But before we get to that, I want to talk a little about last week's episode, the final days of Andre the Giant. Go back and check it out now. Really intriguing stuff about what it was like in those final years for Andre as he dealt with the medical effects of his acromegaly, which is essentially gigantism that made him a giant. He eventually passed away in 1993. We had a doctor on to kind of explain a lot of things about Andre. His general appearance, how the growth affected him, and why he was able to drink so much. I always assumed it's just because he was so big, he could drink more. No, there's actually some medical reasons that had to do with his gigantism. The doctor explains that in the episode which just came out. We also had the masked Hope on, big internet star in the wrestling world, last week to discuss the preview of WrestleMania 40. All that's in the previous episode. Go check it out right now wherever you get your podcast. Today, I'm excited to be joined by an interview I've been sitting on for a while. We finally needed to release it with Brutus Beefcake. Beefcake is an intriguing character who came in back in the 70s alongside Hulk Hogan. He and Hulk Hogan were inextricably linked for decades in their career. They started out together in the 1970s. They looked so much alike, they were even portrayed as brothers in the early territory days. But Brutus Beefcake really became on the national radar in the WWF World Wrestling Federation in '84. That's what I remember as a kid. He's tag teaming with Greg the Hammer Valentine. They're the Dream Team. They hold the world titles. Really good run for him, but his stardom goes up and up and up as we see kind of his overlap with Hulk Hogan, who is his real-life friend. They're in some main events in the late 80s, early 90s, as he adopts the gimmick of the Barber. That was the pinnacle of Brutus Beefcake's career, the Barber. A gimmick that he told me he honestly didn't think it really had any role in wrestling, but he made it work, and he got it over, and he was very successful with it. Eventually, he left for WCW, got there when Hogan was there, had some feuds with Hogan, overlapped with Hogan, and then the NWO comes around in '96 with Hogan, Hall, and Nash, and they bring in Beefcake as the disciple. A good backstory there that Beefcake's going to talk about with us here. A little later on, we are going to be joined by Joe V to break down the life and times of Beefcake and his career. And at the end of the show, stay tuned, a very intriguing story with a young man at Jacksonville, where we're based here, who's in a wheelchair and has a goal of, despite his disability, becoming a pro wrestler, maybe a champion someday. Kind of along the lines of Zach Gowen, who you might remember years past, a few decades ago, wrestled with only one leg, was able to accomplish so much. This is what this guy wants to do. Stay tuned for that. It's going to be coming up after our Beefcake coverage a little later on. So let's get to it. So I cut two interviews back to back that you're going to see with Beefcake. So we did our interview with him at River City WrestleCon, and then while we were in the middle of our live show for the WrestleCon event last year, we were running out of time. We're like, we got to fill time. How are we going to fill time? Beefcake walks over, takes over the show. It was good stuff. So you're going to see some back-to-back clipped-together interviews with him. So here is our interview with, most famously, the Barber, but he was also known as a lot of other things over the years, from Dizzy Hogan back in the early years, to Brutus Beefcake, to Brutus the Barber Beefcake, to the Booty Man, to the Zodiac in WCW. He had all sorts of gimmicks, but most known for the Barber. Here's our interview with Brutus Beefcake. So we're excited now to be joined by Brutus Beefcake, the Barber, and you've gone under a lot of names over the years, Brutus. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on your show, man.
So what have you been doing with your life lately? Talk to me about your life now.
Well, I met some great people from Boca Raton who are starting up their own company called Boca Raton Championship Wrestling.
Okay.
You can see by the shirt. I am the commissioner.
You are the commissioner.
For Boca Raton Championship Wrestling. So I'm really staying busier now that I'm retired than I have been in years.
So you still, like, you've had so many gimmicks over the years, but the Barber is the one that stuck. Why did that stick?
The other gimmicks were not so much real gimmicks. It was just temporaries, you know, temporary things. The Barber was my only real love for a gimmick. The longest running and the best one, you know, WrestleManias, 9 WrestleManias. And,
you were in 9 WrestleManias? Yeah. Oh my God.
And there was, you know, and I did pay-per-views as other characters and everything, but it was not remotely anything like Brutus the Barber Beefcake. So, you know, that's the one.
What are some of your favorite stories from when you were the Barber?
Favorite stories. Watching the British Bulldogs go in my bag, steal my scissors out, and cut people's pants legs off.
They really did this?
When it was 25 below zero outside.
25? They probably didn't like that much.
They were not happy at all. They were, the Bulldogs were tricksters and stuff.
They really were?
That was one of their famous moves. Or super gluing somebody's zipper on their pants shut, or, you know, things like that.
So you went on to WC. Well, actually, let me back up. It was you and Valentine were the dream team for many years.
Correct.
That was, when I was growing up, I was like, you were the team to beat. The dream team was a really good time for you, it looked like, as far as the business.
It was a great time, a great opportunity for me to learn from a great veteran like Greg Valentine, getting to travel the country, and Greg knew his way around, and you know, it really helped my my self-confidence in the ring. When, you know, and when I watched Greg, and he just pulverized everybody. So I said, well, you know, if he's going to pulverize everybody, so am I. So we just both pulverized everybody. And a lot of people didn't like it too much, but one thing's for sure, when people watched our match, they weren't saying, oh, well, that's fake wrestling. Nah.
Yeah.
Nah. We're hitting people and sweat's flying in the air, man. Their bones are breaking and stuff. We made believers out of a lot of people.
So you go on to WCW with Hulk and Jimmy Hart. What was that transition like for you?
Well, we took a break for a couple years to do several movies, television series.
Thunder in Paradise?
Thunder in Paradise at the Grand Floridian Hotel in Walt Disney World. Probably 4 or 5 movies in there. Mr. Nanny. We shot a couple movies we did with for TNT called Shadow Warriors. It had Carl Weathers and Shannon Tweed.
What was that like to get out of wrestling for a while and get into the movie? Really, when wrestlers weren't doing that.
Well, I was Hulk's stunt double, so all throughout.
You were a stunt double? Yeah. I didn't know that.
Every movie, every show, everything he ever did, except for one movie, the 3 Ninjas on Magic Mountain or some movie that totally bombed. Nobody ever saw it. Nobody knows what it is. But
yeah,
most of the other stuff, yeah, I was his body double, his stunt double.
So being in wrestling, was that an easy transition to being a stunt man?
Yeah, you could say so.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm very skilled about riding motorcycles, driving speedboats. You know, it requires more than just.
Did you have the issue with your face? Didn't you have a bad facial injury for a while, if I remember right?
Yeah, I received horrific entire facial destruction. Had to have facial reconstruction, skeletal reconstruction. I have 8 strips of titanium, 30 screws, 50 feet of wire, blah, blah, blah. My jaws were wired shut for 3 months. I was on life support, not expected to live.
Oh my God.
And was able to make a full recovery, you know, by the grace of God.
Well, we're glad you did. So you went on to WCW. You had a lot of gimmicks there. From the booty man to the disciple.
Vince McMahon illegally trademarked my name for a while.
Really?
So yeah, really. And so, They blocked me from being Brutus Beefcake. But once the trademarks ran out and he no longer had legal claim to my name, which he didn't have in the first place, but the law is the golden rule. The man with the gold makes the rules.
Yeah.
So once that happened, and I got Brutus Beefcake back, it's been Brutus Beefcake ever since and forever.
A lot of guys were able to keep their names when they switched companies, but you weren't.
Well, some of those guys brought their names to the company. That's why they could. My name, Brutus Beefcake, started once I was with the company, and then they added the Barber thing to it. So, but still, you don't. They can't trademark my name legally. I trademarked my name. I licensed it to them to use. That's the way it's supposed to work. But Vincent always played by the rules. So.
Now you went on and were in the NWO. What was the NWO like at the time to work there? Did that just change everything?
Well, WCW was struggling. Ted Turner loved wrestling, was keeping it alive, and it was struggling. And when we brought Hulk brought a lot of guys with him, and we started up the NWO, suddenly there was an explosion at WCW, and suddenly they had talent, they were running shows, they had merchandise. The organization went from way down in the red to exploding with money in leaps and bounds. And the Monday Night Wars with Vince and TNT, the Turner organization, got more excitement of wrestling into the world than any time in history. Those years where they were going together head to head, and then once the Turner organization closed it down and Vince tried to buy what was left, and it just nothing happened.
Who do you keep in touch with from the wrestling world? Who are you still close with? Anyone?
I talk to Greg when I can. Bushwhacker Luke is a neighbor.
Really? Down in Tampa?
Clearwater.
Clearwater?
I have all my friends from Boca Raton, some new guys, NXT guys. We have our own giant, Big Jack, Jack the Giant. And, it's just, there's not that many guys left. Jimmy Hart, Duggan, DiBiase, Jake the Snake. That's pretty much it.
Do you keep in touch with Hulk at all?
I just don't go, I don't see him. I live in a different part of town.
Gotcha.
And the beach where he lives is so crowded and congested. I stay away from it. It's just a pain in the ass.
Well, Brutus Beefcake, thanks so much for joining us today on the show.
Right,
we appreciate you having us. And I've always thought those were the deadliest looking foreign objects you could bring to the ring.
Just for the record, no one, and I mean no one, ever has been cut or injured by these.
That's good to know. That's good to know. That's Brutus Beefcake. You had the Barber Shop was your big interview segment. How did that come about? That was like prime spot for you.
Well, that's a long story too. Let's just say I had an accident. I was out of the business for a while, and they decided to utilize my exceptional speaking talents and made the barbershop. And I have to say, Roddy Piper and I were lifelong friends, and his Piper's Pit was big inspiration for me wanting to do the barber shop, and he was actually on the barber shop with me, and it was with Andre and the people we did. It was incredibly good, and so it gives another example of what you can do. You put your mind to it.
So I want to ask, you were part of one of the most iconic wrestling moments of all time on your show when Shawn Michaels broke away from the Rockers and Marty Jannetty and kicked him through your window.
Threw him through.
Threw him through the window.
Yeah.
Did you know that was going to take off like it did?
No. You know what? And here's the thing. Marty's my friend.
Yeah.
Not so much Sean.
Yeah.
And it was a shame to see what happened. Marty got kicked to the curb, left in the dust.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it. They didn't tell him anything. They didn't help him. They just cut him loose. Sean was groomed for, whatever. He got everything.
He did get everything,
yeah. He got everything. And while Marty got nothing. And I hated to see that. I hated to see it. There's a special coming up on Vice called Dark Side of the Ring.
Yeah.
Me and my wife, Missy, did an extensive part of that episode.
Okay.
That's going to air. And I think they liked it so much, they're thinking about doing one.
You're going to do a Vice, possibly.
We'll see.
Well,
but now I'm a commissioner.
Yeah, tell me about what you're doing. What are you doing now?
Sorry. Boca Raton Championship Wrestling. I mean, everybody these days, they watch the product, they're going, it's terrible. I mean, the new guys, they're doing better. AEW and stuff, but some of the other stuff's just no good. So, Neil Glazer and Matt Massler decided to just start their own company.
Okay.
And try to bring back the old school approach. So we got Jack Tallis, is 7 foot tall. We got our giant.
Oh my goodness.
We got Cha-Cha Charlie. We got Bull. We got so many guys, real charismatic guys like the old days. And we give the people a great show, a product that's like from the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
What people want to see, a family show. Not boobs being popped out, and not blood, not guts, and all kind of stuff. Just wrestling, a good guy and a bad guy, and tell a story like we used to.
So I want to ask about. I didn't know this. When Hulk Hogan started his acting career, you were a stunt double. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
I had a lot of fun. One of the first things that I did was Thunder in Paradise.
The old TNT show, yeah.
And one of the first episode that actually convinced the Disney people that this was going to be good was Hulk Hogan supposedly blazing down the Kissimmee, in Kissimmee there, a river, that just windy river, comes up, flying up next to a airboat with Sting on it.
Sting the wrestler?
Yeah. And at 35 miles an hour, without a rehearsal, without a drive, or anything, we're up next to the airboat, steps off at 35 miles an hour, steps off the wave runner onto the front of the airboat and starts a big fight scene with Sting on the airboat while we're going down this river. And then boom, we both finally fall off into the water, and then the real guys pop up. And the Disney guys are watching, and they're like going, wow, man, that's incredible. We didn't know Hulk Hogan could do anything like that. Wow. And then they said, that's not Hulk Hogan. That's his stunt double. And they were just completely blown away. They said, his stunt double looks so good, we can't tell. And we're movie people, we're TV people. That is somebody you want to keep around. Yes.
So was it hard to go from wrestling to stunt double?
No, it was fun.
It was?
Yeah, it's everything I do. Riding motorcycles, driving boats, in planes and cars, doing underwater stuff as a diver, rappelling down, working with explosives and weapons and everything like that.
Now you go to WCW and you've got gimmicks like Zodiac and the Booty Man. What was the deal with that?
Zodiac was in a movie, in one of the movies, Mr. Nanny.
Really? He was? I did not know that.
Yep. Go rent it. You'll see.
I will go rent it now.
You'll see the birth of it. And they put me into after they saw the character, they said, we got to have him in the Dungeon of Doom. And then next thing you know, I'm riding into Detroit, Joe Louis Arena in Detroit on top of Bigfoot, the 20-foot tall big Ford monster truck with the giant Big Show.
Yep.
Me and him. Me as the Zodiac, boom, riding in on the pay-per-view. Boom, riding in there.
God, and then the NWO happens. Was that good or bad for you?
Well, this is hard. The NWO thing was going incredibly well. The Zodiac ran its course. The WCW guys said, "Oh boy, he's been the butcher, he's been the booty man, he's been the this, we can't do anything with Brutus anymore." And I said, "Well, really? Because I really know I am a really good wrestler.
Yeah.
I know how to wrestle.
Yeah.
And they needed wrestlers." I said, "Okay, so let me get this straight. You say I can't be a product that this show can use. It's too many, there's been too much." I went home, back to Madeira Beach where I was living, dropped 40 pounds.
You were ripped at this point.
5% body fat,
Yeah.
30-inch waistline, 20-inch arms. Came back, walked in Ted Turner's CNN Towers for all the big wigs with Hogan, and he walks me in there and says, "I want to introduce somebody to you guys. He's my new disciple." And man, these people were oohing and on. They're like, "Oh my God, look at this. Oh my God, look at this." And then he goes, oh yeah, did I mention this is Brutus Beefcake? And they pissed their pants. Sorry, I hope this on real TV, but half of them ran out because they were so embarrassed. They had to look me in the eye. They looked me in the eye and told me that I was done. I couldn't do anything. According to them, I couldn't do anything. I guess you were all wrong.
Yeah.
Guess you were wrong.
Yep.
And the disciple thing was, and they still wouldn't let me do anything. They wouldn't let me really wrestle on TV. They wouldn't let me. I'd run in or drop some guys and boom and then run out, whatever.
Why was that? Is it because Hogan and Nash were running things, or
well, Hogan supposedly was running things, but it was because Eric Bischoff.
Bischoff was responsible?
Hated me. Fired me 3 times.
Really? Eric Bischoff fired you 3 times?
Yeah.
Why didn't he like you?
It was good because every time he fired me, Hogan got me hired back and got me a raise.
Really?
So he actually did me a favor. A couple times anyway. But the last time I got fired, and that was it. And then WCW went down the shit pipe.
Yeah. And who do you keep in touch with still?
Anybody's alive.
Yeah.
Duggan, Jake, DiBiase, Ron Simmons.
Yeah, who we just had on. Yep. Yep.
The guys.
It's an interesting community, wrestling. If you had done any other business, it wouldn't be like this.
The Nasty Boys. There's still some guys left.
Yeah.
Tatanka, the Bushwhacker.
Yeah.
There's still a few of us left.
Yeah, we're talking to a lot of those today. Do you enjoy events like these still?
Well, that's why I'm here, man. I wouldn't come if I was a miserable old bastard. I think I'd sit here all day, hugging everybody and, taking pictures with them. Nah, I'd be home.
Yeah. Like it.
I love it, and the fans love me.
Yep.
That's when it's good karma. When you've been good to the fans for 30, 40 years, when these people come in and say, "I met you 25 years ago when I was a kid, and you signed my thing, and you took a picture of me and my dad. I'll never forget it." That's good karma. That's what you're talking about. Somebody that did it right. And that's a lifelong fans. You're creating your fans by being a good person and by going the extra mile to be nice to them and make them feel important.
Yeah. Well, Brutus Beefcake, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming and joining us live tonight.
Listen to me, just wailing on, baby.
You're great. Thanks, Brutus. Don't hurt anyone with that. They're signed up real nice. Yes, Boca Raton Championship Wrestling, BRCW. We will put the shout out for that.
Please.
Thanks again, Brutus. I appreciate it. Yeah, BRCW, where he's at today, Boca Raton Championship Wrestling. Those garden shears literally were the scariest weapon I ever saw brought to the ring in pro wrestling history. They always looked like they could kill someone. As he said, no one was ever hurt, but they always looked so dangerous. So I brought on our friend of the show, Joe V, to help us break down the life and times and the career of Brutus Beefcake. Here's our interview with Joe V. Well, now that we sat down with the Barber, Brother Brutus Beefcake, I wanted to bring in Joe V out of Portland, Oregon, KPTV out there. Joe, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, glad to be here, bud.
So talk to me about the Barber. I mean, he was known for a few different reasons. One thing he told me was that he couldn't believe that they gave him the gimmick of a barber, but he was like, he was going to do everything he could to get it over, and it was in its day.
Well, I mean, they gave him that gimmick, if you remember. They gave him that gimmick at WrestleMania 3 in what was kind of the semi-main event with Roddy Piper and Adrian Adonis. He runs in the ring, shaves Adrian's head. Roddy Piper is there celebrating with him. So it was a great way to kind of launch that. Went right into an angle with his former manager, Johnny V, on TV, shaved his head, and instantly over. I will tell you, I don't know how old I was, 10, 11 at the time. He instantly became like my favorite wrestler. And It's funny to me. Yeah. I look back on it now. I'm like, oh gosh, but I was 10, I was like, here's this charismatic, muscular guy in these outrageous outfits, cutting hair, cutting and strutting and all this stuff for years. I thought this was like the coolest stuff.
And I will say his gardening shears were iconic. Yeah. I mean, I immediately was fearful of those. I thought they could do damage to an opponent. And I thought he'd cut someone's hair with them. And it worked.
Or Brutus, who knows? But it's like, obviously nobody's cutting hair with garden shears, but you've got this massive gimmick, this prop that you can carry around, you can use as a weapon, the heel can take it away. It was this perfect symbol of this gimmick that, again, I mean, it really took off. He was in a tag team, of course, with Greg Valentine. We all know he was friends with Hulk Hogan, right? And he actually wrestled in Portland before he was in WWF. He was Dizzy Hogan. He was Hulk Hogan's little brother, supposedly. That's what he was.
Let's get to the Hogan link, because that's as much a part of his career as anything. I don't think it was really publicly known when he was a national babyface in WWF until, I guess it would be around the time they started feuding with Zeus and Savage. Yeah. When he and Hogan started teaming up, and I, as a kid, didn't know they were real life friends. I didn't.
Even then, you didn't really know it. The only time when they finally kind of acknowledged that there was like this off-screen friendship was actually when Beefcake had his parasailing accident. Yeah. And they covered that Hogan was in the hospital with him and all this stuff. But yeah, you're right. Even when they paired him up against Zeus and Savage, they never acknowledged that, hey, these guys have been friends for decades or, whatever it was. It was just like, here's two popular wrestlers teaming up.
And so eventually Hogan goes to WCW, and we finally find out he and Jimmy Hart are also buddies. Yeah. And then Beefcake's brought in, but he's brought in all over the place. He's the booty man.
He was of course the butcher first. Okay. So because they couldn't call him Brutus Beefcake. So, I mean, that's the thing. When Vince McMahon owns your name and your gimmick, so he couldn't be Brutus Beefcake. And probably if he was going around cutting people's hair, even if they didn't call him Brutus the Barber Beefcake, they might have got a cease and desist letter. So they're like, what are we going to do with this guy? So initially, I don't know if you remember this, like in his first few promos when he was in WCW, Hulk Hogan, he'd be in the background and Hulk Hogan would say, Brother Brudi here, he's got my back. Brother Brudi. Okay, whatever. And so then when they did the angle where he turned on Hogan and he was the surprise attacker and they unmasked him, like, my God, it's Brother Brudi. It's like, okay. And then he became the Butcher, and then they main evented Starrcade. And, if he would have been able to be Brutus the Barber Beefcake in that match against Hulk Hogan, it would have had, I think, Same guy, don't get me wrong. The match might not have been any different, but if you could have actually done a Hulk Hogan versus Brutus the Barber Beefcake thing, I think that would have been a bigger deal than what WCW got. And then, as you said, after that, he was all over the place. He was the Booty Man. He was the Zodiac. He was here. He was there. He was
and then NWO happens, and everything changes for everyone in the company. Yeah. And he's no exception. Eventually, he's brought in, and he talked to me about this, that he got better physical body than he'd ever had in his life and just came in ridiculously jacked. I mean, when he came in as the Disciple, I got to give the guy credit. He looked really menacing. He looked really good shape at that point.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of aesthetics, it's probably the most ripped he's been.
Yeah.
I don't know how he got there, but good for him. But yeah, I mean, as a character, it wasn't necessarily like his best days. I think were kind of behind him at that point. The Ultimate, of course, he got put in with the Ultimate Warrior and the One Warrior Nation, and the less said about that Warrior Hogan run in WCW, the better. But he was, a big part of that. And off the top of my head, that's the last kind of like high profile thing I can remember him being involved with. I mean, maybe there's other things, I don't know.
But I don't remember that anything in his WCW time is necessarily much to brag about. The WCW gimmicks were struggles.
Right. And that's crazy because he main evented Starrcade against Hulk Hogan. Yeah. And it still wasn't like terribly, maybe his finest hour. But so, it's not like he didn't have opportunities. But again, when the gimmick and the character, like if Mark Calloway went to another, federation and they couldn't call him the Undertaker and he couldn't pretend to be a dead guy and he couldn't wear black or whatever it is, would it have the same impact? I don't know. And I mean, this is no offense to Ed Leslie, but he's not Mark Calloway. So it's like, it's kind of hard when you don't have access to, the gimmick that made you a millionaire in the first place.
And now I talked to him at the convention and he wasn't the Zodiac. He wasn't the Butcher. He was the Barber. He knows. Mm-hmm. Actually, let me say this. I overlooked probably the high point of his career is the barbershop. The barbershop was iconic. I mean, Rockers split up, obviously. Yeah. Keenan says he don't need Jannetty, and Beefcake's right in the middle of that.
Yep. There's also a very great one that was Sid. If you ever remember that one, where Sid goes ballistic leading up to his match with Hulk Hogan, and he destroys the barbershop set, and there's like shaving cream flying everywhere, and he's threatening to bash in Brutus's surgically repaired face and all this stuff. Yes, and of course the Shawn Michaels thing is iconic. One of the most. And
getting a segment like that back in the golden era was a big deal. Like Snake Pit, Piper's Pit, all the whatever. No, it's Funeral Parlor. And then Jake.
There's a Snake Pit. Yeah.
Okay, that's right. Mm-hmm. But yeah, those were a big deal for a talent.
Yeah. Yes, but the thing was that. Brutus, not that he was like a terrible promo. He wasn't a Roddy Piper. He wasn't a Jake Roberts, but he was over with the fans. And that barbershop came after his surgery, his reconstructive surgery, but before he got back into wrestling. So they knew they had this popular character. They wanted to get him on TV. And so that.
Okay, Jovi, I'm going to wrap it up there. I'm having more tech glitches. This is what you do when you do a show in the middle of lightning. Jovi, hi, Portland. Thanks for joining us.
You got it, brother. Keep strutting and cutting.
He really did have an iconic run. WCW was not as good as his WWF run, but still a major force for all those years was Brutus Beefcake. Before we go, I want to talk about another subject, and that would be a local guy here in the Jacksonville area where we're based out of, Dylan Ford. Dylan Ford is in a wheelchair. Dylan Ford is affiliated with Destiny Combat Championship Wrestling. He trained with Sean Spears and Tyler Breeze in Apopka, Florida. He's been a manager, and he's in a wheelchair. His goal, he contacted me to say, is I want to be a wrestler. I'm like, I got to get this guy on the show. I want to know more about this, how that could be possible. And he's actually got a fundraiser going on to try and raise money for a wheelchair so he can actually, get in the ring as maybe, I don't recall ever seeing a wrestler in a wheelchair. So it's an intriguing idea and an intriguing concept. And here's our interview with a Jacksonville-based wrestling manager at this point, Dylan Ford. Well, we are here with Dylan Ford right now with an interesting wrestling story. Dylan, thanks for joining us today.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it.
And Dylan, you're from the Jacksonville area where we're at. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir. That's correct. Jacksonville, Florida.
So talk to me about your story here. You have been involved in wrestling in kind of a unique format.
Yes, absolutely. I started my wrestling career February 20th, 2021. I started off as a manager. I really just wanted to get my foot in the door and, actually have someone with a disability in wrestling. And it's always been my dream to be in wrestling, period. And unfortunately, 3 years, going on 4 years now, it's just for me, being a manager is not enough for me. I want to actually get in the ring and wrestle. That's always been my dream. That's always what I've thought about. And I just can't shake that feeling. So it's just that's the end goal, is for me to wrestle and to be a champion while in a wheelchair.
So talk to me about I want to get to the fundraiser in a bit. I'm trying to understand physically how you kind of envision this working. Obviously, it would be a great accomplishment if you could. How do you envision it working? I mean, I think of Zach Gowen, the wrestler. He wrestled with one leg many years ago. I mean, are you aware of Zach? Is there are you patting yourself there, or what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so there are actually a lot of different wrestlers in the world that have disabilities.
Okay.
Zach Gowen being one of them, and there's also a gentleman by the name of Gregory Iron who has cerebral palsy. He also works in wrestling. He, has his things that he works out too, and those are things that I'm thinking about as well. I know there's a lot of different, scenarios, challenges that we got to figure out, but I know that I can find a solution for each and every one of them.
I want to talk about those challenges because I'm sure you've thought a lot about this. Talk to me about how you envision this going if we're able to make this happen.
So yeah, obviously one of the main issues is, getting in the ring. That is going to be one of the major hurdles that I got to get through. And I'm already, thinking of things. I'm already getting ideas. One of them is to make a ramp. My dad, he's a welder, and we're thinking of building a ramp and like going up to the ropes. Another thing I can figure out is getting strong enough and going from the floor and just climbing my way up the ropes and using the chair that I'm getting built to climb the ropes on my own and to get in the ring.
Why do you want to do this so badly? What drives you?
Honestly, there are many different driving forces for it. One of them being my grandfather, bless his soul. We and him, we watched wrestling all the time throughout my life. He was what inspired me to love wrestling, and it's been passed down through our family for generations. And I love it. And that's because of him. We would watch it every day, like pretty much every days of the week that they had wrestling on TV. And, now that he's not around, I made a vow to myself that I would be a wrestler and make him proud. That's one of the reasons. Secondly would be just if as far as WWE has Make-A-Wish. They have the program where there's many people with disabilities that get introduced to wrestlers and they get to meet their heroes. And for me, that's actually a really cool program that they have. And I feel like what would enrich it more and to make it better is to have someone who is also in a wheelchair or has a disability for them to watch in pro wrestling. That way they can see that, like, when somebody's in the ring, they'd be like, hey, that guy's in a wheelchair. That guy is like me. So that means I can do it too. And I want other people to see that as well, not just people on Make-A-Wish, but other people with disability, and say, hey, I can do that too. I don't want to be the only guy in wrestling or girl or anybody. I don't want to be the only one with a disability. I want all walks of life to come into wrestling and to have this moment like I am.
And if I understand right, you have a fundraiser set up. Can you tell me a little about that?
Yes, it is the GoFundMe for the wheelchair. So my chair that I'm getting made is going to be made by Aaron Fotheringham. If I don't know as far as you know or the audience knows, but Aaron Fotheringham was on Nitro Circus. He did crazy stunts on the show where he jumped ramps, did loops in the chair, and he actually makes his own chairs that are very agile, very maneuverable, and can be used in something like wrestling. So I reached out to him, and he said he can make the chair. The only thing that is an obstacle right now is just the amount of money that it would take to pay for the chair. And so I decided, hey, why don't I start a GoFundMe and see how that goes?
Well, Dylan Ford, good luck. We definitely want to check in and see how things are going as the months go by. I appreciate you reaching out and coming on the show today.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Scott. It's an honor to be here, and I appreciate you putting me on this platform, and it really means a lot to me.
Thanks, Dylan. Have a good day.
Have a good day, sir.
Great story there with Dylan, and we will be monitoring to see how this goes with him. Very cool of what he's got going on. So I want to thank Dylan for coming on the show, and of course, Ed Leslie. I don't know that I really said his name. Joe did once. The real name of Brutus Beefcake coming on the show today. We're so happy to have Brutus Beefcake, Brother Bruti, with us today. Joe V out of KPTV in Portland. We also appreciate his contribution to the show today, and thank you for watching. We hope to see you back here next time on Going Ringside.
This has been Going Ringside with The Local Station, brought to you every Wednesday on your favorite podcast player, on New Sport Jacks Plus, as well as the New Sport Jacks YouTube channel.